So the State Department decided to delay their decision on approving or disapproving the Keystone XL pipeline. And Fox News had on conservativetownhall.com columnist Derek Hunter to discuss this issue with a centrist Democrat, and they both massively failed. Listen.
Do you agree with that statement that there's no politics being played here?
Oddly enough, no, it's a great question because that's the billion-dollar question. Of course politics are being played here. Everything this White House is doing is based on politics. On the one hand, they've got their labor union friends who want the jobs. They've got the American people who want the jobs. And on the other hand, they've got the environmentalists who don't care about the jobs. And Tom Steyer, billionaire, who's pledged $100 million to influence, shall we say, the upcoming election, and his own political advisor said that where that money is spent depends on the decision on the Keystone pipeline. So it's all politics.
You talked about jobs. We do have evidence that Keystone XL would support eventually about 42,000 jobs and bring 800,000 barrels of crude oil to the Gulf Coast. But Simon, I want to get your reaction because I assume that you do not agree with Derek.
Well, I think that what's important to recognize is how much the energy picture in the United States has changed over the last few years. I mean, we're on track with or without Keystone to be largely energy independent by 2020. The reforms in Mexico are going to be bringing even more local energy into play here in the United States, while we've also seen a huge increase in renewables. And I think that on balance during this period, the energy picture in the United States is far better than it used to be under President Obama, and will get better, I think, if we end up passing Keystone. And I'm a supporter of it, and I'm happy to say that. But I also think that whether it gets passed in the next few months or it happens 6 months from now, it's really not that big a deal. It's very political. It's got to get worked through the political system, and I think we're getting close to a decision.
Okay, you said we're not quite sure when the decision is going to be made, but we do think that will be pushed back, perhaps past the November election. So, Derek, we're seeing a lot of these red state Democrats really backing off. We're seeing that Louisiana, Alaska, among other states. What about those races in those key states?
Well, those are the people that have the most to gain by having this approved because it means jobs in their states. And those are the people that the president is willing to risk in order to appease the environmentalists. I mean, I'm all for alternative energy, but until we come up with something that actually works and is efficient, we have to live in the real world. We're not to the point where we can have a car that runs on unicorn tears and hopes and dreams.
Stupid liberals. Cars don't run on unicorn tears and hopes and dreams. I love how the Fox News idea of a fair and balanced debate is three people in favor of the Keystone Pipeline. And actually, I messed up because I didn't edit it in there, but right before when the clip starts, they actually, enter the clip with one of the Fox News voiceovers, and the voice says, "A fair and balanced debate." They give, like, the music and stuff. Yeah, there's your fair and balanced debate. Everybody's in favor of the pipeline. Totally fair, totally balanced. Well, needless to say, there were so many factual errors there, so let me educate these silly people real quick. I like when he says, well, cars don't run on unicorn tears and hopes and dreams. Yes, that is indeed true. However, cars also don't run on fuel that's shipped to China. Whoops, they forgot to tell you that very important fact in this debate. If you talk to anybody about the Keystone Pipeline and they're like casually in favor of it, you'll find that about 100% of the time the person goes, well, look, we're just trying to become more energy independent. That's why I'm in favor of it. But none of the oil and none of the gas is actually going to stay here. We're shipping it all overseas. So that reason is totally out the window. And by the way, I would gladly admit that I think it's a different conversation if we're saying, look, we're gonna do the pipeline and then all the products are going to be used here in America by law. Then I'd say, okay, that's a different conversation now that I actually might be in favor of it. But they're not. They're taking all of the oil, all the gas, and they're shipping it overseas. And then also might I add that this isn't like, it's not like, hey, they're going to use the land of the American people, which they are, and it's okay because we're going to pay you for your land, which we're using. They're not doing that. they're creating the pipeline, and it's going directly into the pockets of like Valero and ExxonMobil and Koch affiliated groups. It's going all into private hands. See, a lot of people don't know this about America, but when it comes to our oil industry within our borders, now, of course, this starts in Canada and then comes through, but in other countries, if you take oil out of the people's land, you actually owe the people money. I know, a radical idea. But here in America, we have politicians that go, oh, are you going to take the oil off of public land? Okay, go right ahead. We'll watch you. And they don't force like, hey, you have to pay these taxpayers X amount of money. In fact, the only state where they actually do that is Alaska, ironically. You know, Sarah Palin, who's a right-winger, did the socialist move of telling the oil companies, no, you have to pay every single one of the citizens in Alaska in order to take the oil out of their land. So they're running a pipeline through our land, and they're not going to pay us. It's all going into private hands. But let me give you some more information on this. They claim it creates 42,000 jobs. Okay, that's so far off, it's ridiculous. So, first of all, even the industry is saying it's going to create 20,000 jobs. So, boom, we're already more than cut in half. But on top of that, the actual independent estimates from the objective groups who are not affiliated with to actually make money off the deal, they say it's going to create, you ready for this? 6,000 jobs. But I'm not even done yet. That's just for a year, 2 years max, and then you know how many permanent jobs it's going to create? 35. How's that for a jobs program? I mean, what we're talking about is a pipeline that is only going to benefit the already rich oil companies, natural gas companies, the Koch-affiliated groups. Okay, what we're talking about is using public land and not paying the public. What we're talking about is shipping all of the product overseas and massively adding to global warming and pollution. And there were articles coming out of Canada that the original Keystone pipeline, downwind from where they're doing tar sands oil extraction, the communities have higher cancer rates because it creates massive pollution and they have to use toxic chemicals during the process of refining and all that stuff. So downwind from those areas, the cancer rates are through the roof. So what we're talking about is a massive disaster from a health perspective, from a pollution perspective, from an economic perspective, from a global warming perspective. But they're acting on Fox. They have a Democrat come on and say, oh, these silly liberals, unicorn tears. They think that you could run cars on unicorn tears. They're so stupid.